Hi, good morning. John Everett here, local page one with 3D printing pioneer and legend, Mr. Mike Halverson. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, John. How are you?
Fine, thank you. The subject matter today we're going to be talking about is basically the 3D printing solution applications as it applies to medicine and education and possible impact on government.
Sounds great, John.
Okay, so I know you got a busy schedule and we appreciate you joining our show, my friend. So we're just going to jump right in and get after it. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Now, Mike, the last interview that we did with you, you shared with us if somebody can dream it, if somebody can imagine it or envision it, then you can 3D print it. Now, based on those simple ideals, what solutions does 3D printing pose for medicine as we know it today?
Well, not being a doctor or a research analyst, I've spent a lot of time with a few chronic ailments. I'm a diabetic, and so I've kind of spent some time trying to figure out if I could print the pancreas. And basically making a pancreas or growing one is almost impossible. But with a 3D printer, because of the structure of the way a 3D printer works, line by line, it is feasible to take an MRI of an organ, very detailed, and then save that, get some stem cells, and instead of using the material plastics that we use today, we could print a structure, an organ, if you will, with a 3D printer. Now, personally, and I think it's my own personal bias, but personally, I think this is probably going to be the one thing that really brings 3D printing into the forefront. Because, in theory, soon you will just simply be able to take that MRI and say, hey, this is a faulty organ, let's print a new one. You take stem cells right from a person's body, and you create an undifferentiated organ and say, let's go. And it prints the organ, and after a while, it is your organ, your heart, your pancreas, veins. It's a terrible thing to say this, but we still live in a dangerous world, and people go to war. When they're in war, they get burned. That's one of the things that our enemies like to do. Skin is something that's very hard to harvest, but we could 3D print skin, and it would be exactly what you lost. Could be sewn back in, and within a very short period of time, you'd be 100%. That's the future of 3D printing for medicine. And creating organs is just one of the most exciting areas, and there's a lot of research going on every day for this field.
Mike, that is absolutely miraculous how 3D printing is going to impact the medical world. Now, based on what I know and what I'm hearing from you today, I can only imagine how the role of 3D printing is going to have on education. So, what do you see as the most practical applications for global 3D printing as it relates to educators and education?
Well, you know, when we get a little bit older, we get a little staid in our ways. And that's kind of an unfortunate scenario, but when we deal with kids in the educational environment, they're not necessarily playing by a set of rules. Now, it's unfortunate we can't just give every kid a 3D printer. That would be my goal. But 3D printing frees that young mind to experiment in any way, shape, or form they want, creating new things out of ideas, and they're not hampered by tens of thousands of dollars of investment capital they need to come up with a new idea. Now, that can be as simple as a piece of jewelry, or it can be a new mechanism, or a new carburetor, or any number of things that somebody can invent. All kids in the school system need access to 3D printers because they're essentially getting an entire factory right on their desktop. Now, admittedly, they can't do some things, print out of gold or some strange metal, but it doesn't really make any difference because they get the opportunity to print it out of plastic and test it and see if it makes sense. It does not hold anyone back from becoming an inventor, and that's where education comes into it. It's access. Education is another word for access. If every kid has access to a 3D printer, I can't tell you what's going to happen, but I know it's positive. We've seen it locally here in Nevada. We've worked with the educational institutions, and I'm amazed at what kids do. They have no fear of the 3D printer. They have no fear of the software. They just go for broke. And the things they create are amazing.
Wow. So the sky truly is the limit, isn't it, Mike?
Absolutely, 100%. We lost the ability to be artisans a long time ago. If we wanted a cup, we went to, or we go to some department store and we buy a cup, and everybody has the same cup. With a 3D printer, you can make your own cup. Not that you really need to make a cup, but it could be as crazy as you want it to be. So thousands of years ago, there was no place to go and just buy thousands of cups. You went and bought a cup at the local marketplace. We're not going back to that, but we're giving everybody the freedom to do something individual, and that's really what it's exciting.
Well, okay. Well, Mike, regardless of where you go or where you turn, one can't hear enough about government, both good and bad. Irrespective of this, how do you see 3D printing being used positively as far as a positive impact for so many issues in cities, counties, states, and that the federal government faces today?
Well, I can only speak to certain limited areas, but let's just take a company like Pratt & Whitney, and they make airplanes for the government, and the government buys them. After a while, they retire all the parts, and their inventory gets degraded, but the airplane's still totally fine, but it breaks. Small parts break. You could print those parts in almost no time, and the government can take advantage of that because they don't need to keep that inventory around. Knowing that governments tend to maybe pay a little more than you and I might pay for something, the reality is, in terms of inventory of parts or things that they need to maintain, a 3D printer would be a godsend because it would be easy to 3D print many of these parts. As far as the other places within the government that are not, let's say, quartermaster centered or centered on a service, it again goes back to the idea of, hey, we can prototype this. We can take a look at this. Governments can print big landscapes, and those landscapes can come from data that's readily available by satellite data, but they can print them and actually visualize them by really looking at where things are. So logistics become far better because you can actually see what the terrain is. You can actually feel it. You can see it. It's not just a picture. I like 3D things. I hold a couple of patents for 3D, but nobody really wants to put on red-blue glasses or a set of glasses to look at 3D. But if you hold it in your hand or it's on a desktop, you can see it. And that's the difference. It's not a fantasy anymore. It's not a facsimile. It's the real thing. And that's what's cool.
Wow. Mike, that's absolutely incredible. Well, there you have it, folks, from one of the pioneers of the software that created 3D printing. So the technology is absolutely remarkable. It genuinely has endless applications, both in the public and private sector. So remember, if you can dream it, you can imagine it, you can print it. Mike, I want to thank you so much for your time today because I know you're a busy man, my friend.
Well, it was an honor, John, and if I can ever be of assistance to help this market grow, please feel free to call upon me.
I will, and we appreciate that. And thank you for your time, Mike. Okay, this is John Everett, Mike Halverson. We're saying goodbye, and you have a happy 3D printing day. Thanks, Mike.
Bye-bye.